Ready? All right. Call me to order. Start with roll call.
Jason Wirt. Tiffany Gant is absent tonight. Tony Bevel. Dorian Lynn is absent tonight. Lisa Patterson. Here. And Richard Amici.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or corrections on minutes? Take a motion to approve.
I move we'll accept the minutes of this.
Discussion. Yeah. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Citizen comments.
No citizen comment.
All right. Who's right along on the business? City charter review. Discussion.
Well, I think y'all received an email in regards to the city looking for people, volunteers from each of the community groups and just, if anyone wanted to participate in that, if there was anyone at the time to be able to do that.
Is it one person per committee
So they're looking for,
and then
yeah,
two like at-large citizens?
there was gonna be some citizen pieces to it as well, but from the committees, they were looking for one from each, if possible.
No more than,
Yeah.
we talked about it at the police board meeting last week, and the person who had previously done this said that it was 3 or 4 meetings that they had throughout the course of the year. Each meeting was about an hour and a half, up to 2 hours. And the goal would be for any changes to the charter to go on the November 24 election. So it would be done well in advance of that. The person from our group who ended up volunteering was concerned was that when we cut into hunting season, they guaranteed it would be done well before then. So it means, I guess, summer it's done.
How soon are they expecting volunteer?
So I think that the way we did ours is we came up with volunteer that meeting, but everything else is kind of out in the open, or up in the air as far as when the first meeting is going to be. It sounds like there might be one meeting this year and then the next couple into early next year. There might not even be one this year. It might all end up happening after January.
What I saw online, because I did read about it and it's been a while. I remember thinking, I thought it was monthly and it was like, and they had like even a date set. So maybe I'm thinking of it, because when I was reading it, I thought, yeah, it seemed like a bigger commitment than what you had.
So they said, again, the person who did it last time, he goes, I think I did 3 or 4 meetings, hour and a half, 2 hours each. I don't know, I was part of the process. Or just part of the discussion.
I wonder, do they review the whole charter and then, or is there input from citizens or input from, different commissions, or how do they go about finding what to look at in the charter?
Good question. Anyone from the city? No, I assume that there'd be someone moderating it who's a city employee, maybe.
Was there a consultant too, or is it in-house led?
I would assume though they have a city moderator to it, yeah.
Well, there's 3 people not here. We can nominate.
Good plan.
Look, I would say if someone's interested in doing it, that's great. Let us know. We'll move that name forward of any of you that are. If you're not, we won't browbeat you into it. And at the end of the day, we understand, like we appreciate the time and effort you guys put into doing such things as this. And and other volunteer functions, so. If you want to be able to do it, great, if you don't, we'll let them know that we just don't have anyone at this point, so. I don't want you guys all.
But they review it every 6 years? Is that correct then? That's a lot of,
I'm struggling to remember the email exactly, but yeah, I think it was sooner than that.
yeah, so.
I potentially could do it. I like to look into it a little bit more. I thought. I must not have read the email very closely. I thought it was just a pitch to the general citizens.
Everybody,
Looking for another, to fill another committee, and so I might have just,
they're like, oh, someone else can volunteer, yeah.
I didn't realize they were looking for representatives from other committees.
Yeah, it says here, it'll be 10 members, 6 of them will be from the different boards and commissions with no more than 1 member from each board or commission. So I think if we don't pick someone today, it'll end up coming back around to this group to say someone, we're kind of counting on someone to step up. Because we're one of the
Yeah, I can
commissions.
look into it.
Very, very, very important position. Change the charter of the city.
Yeah, and usually, I mean, just from being an active voter, I remember occasionally something will come up, will be like this, measure or whatever, we'll make a change to the charter where we do this. So it's usually something, most of it gets renewed as is, but there's maybe 1 or 2 adaptations that occur from this committee.
I was reminded about the 2%, the city can increase taxes over 2%, and I forget, sorry, don't remember all the details, but that's, that's very important thing to look at.
So Jason, do you want us to, you said put your name down as a possible?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
Tony, did you want your name down there as possible?
No, thank you. I think Jason would be it. Not that I wouldn't like to do it, but right man for the right job for one, so.
I actually would be interested to look maybe more into it too, but yeah, I think I had misconceptions of the time commitment, so.
Okay.
That was helpful.
When they're forming this,
Some of the applications are due Monday, August 28th. But I don't know if that's for the at-large applications versus the committee representatives.
well, maybe we can.
We have other committee meetings that have to happen to figure it out. Get you info.
Okay.
We'll get you connected with who you need to get connected to. For any questions you have, then I'd say it's fair to say you'll get some communication next week or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to new traffic safety request. So there's a new one requesting additional signage for pedestrians indicating Villa Road as a roadway, new park entrance to Southwest Wildlife Haven Court. This is connected to that other request that we had, similar issues brought up down there. The lengthy explanation in there, it's worth to read. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read it. It's informative.
Thanks. Well, first off, you'll see we kind of, Sabrina did a great job, just numbered it as 0.1 since it really is a very similar mimicking of the original, which was 2023-005. So kind of a secondary similar point to it with some bigger detail in this one in regards to saying like, hey, we heard your first one. We heard that you were talking about certain aspects of what you guys may think is a project. And this one, they were obviously providing some real detailed thoughts in regards to how that should. Jason?
Yeah, and similar to a lot of case files, or we're gonna be able to split them up into what we can do now, what we can do later. And I think this one, obviously, we don't have all the money to do a Villa Wildlife Haven road improvement and dollar address all these concerns. And there is going to be pavement maintenance out there. Exactly when that's going to occur, I don't know, but those projects will be prioritized through our CIP plan. And obviously, this is gonna be much more than $100,000 to complete, but my thought is finding out when we're going to do the next round of pavement maintenance down there and hopefully come up with some interim signing that doesn't solve all the problems, but it at least makes everyone aware that there are vehicles there. It's a shared use pathway with sharrows there, which that would to me indicate that it's a roadway with bicycles. And maybe we can do some sort of cheap striping or something that pushes pedestrians off to the side. So we're kind of turning it into a shared use pathway. But as far as addressing all the items, which is very detailed, and I think that will help when we hire a consultant to do the Villa Road project. And this Villa Road section of Villa Road has been shown in previous TSPs in 1992. I think it showed a road going through Villa Road, but
Wanted a road to go through.
yeah, and I think it may have identified or was looking at a project and then since scaled back to just leaving it the way it is. So this has been kind of brought up over the years. So
Through the park.
yeah, the portion through the park and obviously there's a creek there and a bridge we'd have to replace and there's not a whole lot of traffic. So clearly it didn't rank high. So that's how it's scaled back to really a shared use pathway. But we've been getting comments about these houses having to interact with pedestrians for years. So we need a clear plan, but you know, staff doesn't have the resources and time to go in and do an engineering plan for a project that hasn't been approved, but we are gonna put this into the CIP plan as an aspirational project. And I'm more than happy to keep discussing the project and the plans and getting feedback from the residents there. And we'll keep this when we hire a consultant and it goes forward with the project for the, with a bigger improvements project, but also from the committee's perspective, what can we do now with the signs? Where are we gonna get money to do that? And similar to St. Charles, the spot we went up. Obviously, we can't do it all, so phased approach here, I think.
But there are 4 houses on that little section. I mean, this is 4 houses. This is not a major thoroughfare. I mean, there are a lot of walkers, bikers, but as far as cars, how many cars impact that? This, for me, it's not an issue.
I think, Tony, you bring up a great point. I think Jason and I talked about similar topic aspects, which is that Jason said it goes to CIP project list. And once again, of all those projects, where does this one fit in? Are we or are you as a committee saying, no, nothing gets done? Or are we saying, no, something gets done and it will be a big project? And when will that happen? Right? So
Yeah,
it
and
kind of goes to your point, you're spot on, Tony.
well, like we do when they do the pavement maintenance out there, I'll be an advocate for putting the sharrows down and some additional signage that at least kind of help the pedestrians know that, hey, there might be a vehicle on here, but other than that, yeah, I agree, it's a little bit of a, although Bob has that conceptual plan for the Wildlife Haven connection, which is referenced in here too, so probably it's snuffed out for the CIP plan and project scoping and outreach, public involvement, so.
I think for you all, what we talked about too was that for you, we would leave it on the agenda, right, Jason, for the, till the signage aspect, till we address potentially putting additional signage up. The bigger project of moving roads and changing all that stuff, that's CIP and that's outside of our scope. So
I think that you mentioned striping might be a good alternative to signage. You know, the signage might not be necessary depending how the striping goes. I know I've biked that path with my kids before. When you're coming from Old Town, you're very aware that you're on a road until you enter the park. When you're coming from the park, you're coming uphill, you're moving really slow and it's easy to get out of the way of an oncoming vehicle. So if there's just some striping to, you know, point out that you should be heading this way, then at that point, you know, people should be able to handle it themselves.
And to go to your point, Richard, can you reflect, remember we were talking about like a time frame for them in regards to what would that potentially could look like? No hard and fast, but
I don't know right now, but I think we should just leave this one as a touch and go item on the agenda, because if I check into Public Works and they're saying, well, we're not planning on paving Villa, that section for 5 years, well, then we might have to motion for putting some trails down or doing nothing, I guess. I don't know if you'd do a motion to do nothing, but I do potentially, but table this item, and then I'm more than happy to talk to these folks, and regardless of traffic safety committee, to get their input on what they think should be done outside their house. I mean, that goes for anybody in the city, so.
but if it's being repaved, not in 5 years and it's being repaved next year, then maybe this comes off the agenda quicker once it gets directional markings or
Yeah,
signs.
so a horizontal white stripe or something like that, and we're good. You know, maybe that takes care of it, and maybe their needs aren't all the way addressed, and maybe it just does something better than what's there, which is not much, if anything at all, right now.
I think, I guess I just wanted to point out that I think that even though it's not a lot of vehicle traffic, it is a lot of people traffic and, you know, safety as a concern. And so even though it's from the resident, they're wanting it more signage acknowledging that it is also a roadway. I think that, which is fine, you know, I think, it's almost like a driveway, it seems like. I wonder if there's any signage that's like local access only, or, you know, like you said, there's 4 or 5 houses there that need to drive on that road, but then limit it to that, mainly just because it is a key trail connection and almost, you know, not countering their point, but I think that, you know, the safety of the people walking and biking are more important to like elevate that there are vehicles on the roadways, just more as like a safety for the people walking and biking, but then also acknowledging that you're sharing it with vehicle traffic.
So question, Chair, I'm not calling you Jason, remember, it's not out of no love. Let's do that. So,
So that's why I said next time to make it.
yeah, thanks, appreciate that, Chair. Correction, so just to clarify, I don't think you guys need a motion on this, because you already did a motion on 005. Right, that we would review for signage. Unless you see it different.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
I guess with adding to though, that you were gonna look into the repaving list too.
Yeah, next meeting, hey, Jason, when are we repaving this portion of Villa? And I should have within 2 years or more than 5 years,
Mhm.
and then we can maybe discuss approaches or tabling item, and I'll reach out to the property owner and see what, you know, maybe they can put mirrors, convex mirrors, and we can do something in the interim. Or probably know who to call and voice their concerns for the next, you know, year plus.
I think a couple other thoughts I had, thinking about this and reading the person's description of everything, coupled with some stuff I'm doing separately for my own work. Shared streets is kind of a terminology that's becoming more and more popular or common across the country. Where streets are designed with this exact intent to put pedestrians and vehicles on the same, in the same space. And there's evolving guidelines and criteria for how those sorts of spaces are designed. And I think that, you know, if you can't get a separate connection through the Wildlife Haven Court, and this always forever becomes this shared street, like I think you could, the CIP that someday might happen could be, let's just call this a shared street and do what's necessary, which might be putting, you know, tactile warning strips at the top of the hill. So when you come from the path and you enter the street, it's like, you know, everybody, including blind people or whatever, they know they've just entered a street. And then there's signage, that you could put in, that there's starting to be guidance on that, to what types of signs you could put in. And then one other thought that I had, was the person talked about it being a 25-mile-an-hour street, and they would drive slower because it doesn't feel safe, but people yell at them anyways. I think with a pretty straight face, you could call it an alley, and you could probably sign it at 15 without having to go through any hoops to make that happen. So you could put up a 15-mile-an-hour speed sign, a sign people would see, and they'd be like, oh, people can drive this, maybe that helps. I don't know, just some thoughts.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, but just find example treatments for shared streets. I don't know if New Zealand come to mind or.
Well, NACTA, I can send this to you later. NACTA has an urban street residential shared street guide. And they talk about the different things.
Portland has similar guidelines. Right now, they're called slow streets, but they're the same thing, the same idea. They're open to vehicular traffic, but they're residential roadways that are low volume, low speeds that are also meant to serve people walking and biking.
The golf cart community too, that's.
Yeah.
Low speed, 15 miles per hour. Not as accident prone. I
Yeah,
like that idea of the 15 mile.
Should I be interested in the width though too, because if to call it technically a shared street, it has to have a certain width.
And I feel like that's 20 feet, I mean, just the cycle track width, but I know cities are pushing that concept as far as Barlow, 12. The two-way for bikes and peds, so. But for that vehicle to be on there too, it's like 20 miles or 20 feet seems
Yeah.
the minimum that you want.
I think to go to Tony's point too on this one, on this case specifically, I think. Costs will become, right, in the whole juggernaut of everything that we're dealing with, how much do we put into this one, right? So whatever analysis.
And I think there'll be the CIP project, which is what Bob had been referring to, and we looked at with the wildlife haven and maybe shared use and some park amenities there too. But then in the interim, are we gonna catch it with a paving project and do things with that, or are we stuck just needing to go get 15-mile-per-hour signs that are enforceable and just doing the bare minimum? $1,000 or $2,000 worth of stuff.
I wonder too if Parks has any funding, since it's a trail connection that they
We
could,
did
or
look
if
at
they
the
have
parks
any.
master plan and they did look at this area, and I don't think it was listed or included on there. Financially constrained list, but they're, even though they have a high SDC, they're still wanting to throw all that money into the, commingled ball fields and things like that.
it'll be interesting to see what comes, if anything comes into or is put into the accessible transition plan.
Oh, yeah.
guys are working on.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that I've been kind of delving into a lot is that there's only 4 homes, but it still is a public road. And the accessibility components of a road like this, or accessibility gets kind of complicated. And so it might be tough to justify the cost for some of these improvements. But the fact that you're sending people into a public street, you may, with your transition plan, you may find that you don't have much choice.
Right. Excuse me, and that's when we were doing the Cedar Creek Trail, this portion of Willow Road was included with federal funding, and the FHWA folks and ODOT folks red flagged it, and they basically said you have to build a half street of your local TSP paved all the way out with a curb and a sidewalk and lighting. So we were like, sorry, we don't have an extra $2 million to do this trail, so we yanked that out of the project, but that's their perspective, that you need to make it accessible with curb and not sharrows for a true shared roadway. And so I don't think that, the feds are on board with the shared use concept, but local funding, we can things that are more outside the box. Power homes, shine it like a private drive.
Yeah.
Speed it for an alley. And we should be covered. There we go.
Anybody have anything else on that before we move on? All right, we'll move into pending traffic safety requests. So just to clarify before we head through these, when they have a list of items we're pending until something. Is that just an indication that there's no update today? You want me to kind of just move through them?
There could be an update, yeah, on some of these, yeah. So they're pending because there's something that we've told you we're gonna do. You've made a motion previously or
Okay.
something like
I
that.
just wanted to understand if I should cruise by those or you want me to go through them.
Call each one and we'll tell you if we've got nothing new or if we've got something.
All right, well, let's start with 22-005, the request to lower speed limit, add more lighting, sidewalks, bike lanes, crosswalks on Eden Road.
Not any update specifically for this, the speed limit request study that was completed earlier this month and approved for 35 miles per hour. It was waiting on the speed limit study for Elwood Road. Obviously, the rest of those items are incorporated with the Edie Road improvements project. To add street lighting wide the road all the way up to Elwood. So that's my update on that one, is the speed limit was already approved and I can kind of give you an update on 5 with 6. So we have an update on the speed study for 6.
Okay, well, we can combine then the cruising that one too, so those 006 request to lower speed limit. Speed bumps on Elwood. Stop signs with flashing lights.
Similar to the Edie Road item 005, just an update on the request to lower the speed limit. This one was approved a couple days ago. We got the order today. So both of them are approved. That's 35 miles per hour. That was a 10 mile per hour reduction, so it took a little bit longer to get approved. I've reached out to the county about when we can get those installed, to see if they're still a 1 in a million shot. We can get them installed by next Wednesday. I doubt it, but I'll check in with them tomorrow. There's a Hail Mary chance. But the good news is the speed studies are done and 35 miles per hour both roads, and the sign should get swapped out pretty soon. Tried our best to get it before school. Maybe we'll get lucky. That's my update on 5 and 6. Okay.
Anybody have any questions? All right, we'll move on to 22.10, parking concerns on St. Charles Way to pathway requesting no parking signs in the area.
So on this one. As you all know, a year ago, I've been here a year now. Is when I started, and just as I was starting with short police, Bob was leaving. And we had to have Jason join us. This was one that you guys made a motion. It was discussed in the meeting. You guys made a motion asking for a crosswalk to go across St. Charles Way. Jason and I went out there, since we've seen you last, to re-review this one. And the thing that we've noticed is that in that original motion, it was strictly for a crosswalk to get across to the other side of St. Charles to where the sidewalk is, because there's no sidewalk on both sides. In the review of it, when we looked at it, I think we were discussing the aspect of a couple things. One, that we thought that it would be beneficial to have like motors or what's it, like no.
A crosswalk closed barricade immediately, just in the interim, before we, because we don't have the funds to do the enhancements right now, but just because it seems so hard to see.
And then there was the other piece, which was just the aspect of flashing.
Advanced warning, and and Jason may be able to kind of go out there and look at this too, but the sight distance on that horizontal corner, and I believe that it does not have the proper sight distance for just the basic enhancement to be visible. But there would need to be a flashing beacon kind of pointing further down the road. And it's precarious enough where I would want to hire a consultant to look at it, like a Kettleson or somebody like that that does this, because it is on that horizontal curve. And those are the spots where they're recommended not to put these sorts of trail crossings. So I think the immediate thing that we're looking for is this kind of a reconstruction of the motion to immediate motion to install crosswalk closed barricades just to get everyone's attention that don't cross here. And then that would allow the police, I think, to even take it, because it's a crosswalk, we could even put a no parking sign with that spot. But that's what we want to do now, just because we felt that it was an immediate safety issue. But that's something that we can do here in the next 30, 60 days through the city crews and just put up those barricades on both sides for now.
You don't have someone just rambling right up to the middle of that road. So sorry to kind of bring this back to you again. You know, you already had a motion. We just feel like that original motion isn't gonna get dealt with fully in the right timeline. And we need to do something sooner. So we're looking to see if you would consider an additional or an amendment to the motion. The motion of the crosswalks, as Jason said, is still needed, and so your decision on that is still thumbs up good. We're just looking for you to consider the concept of something to prevent us from having a pedestrian end up stumbling out into the road. Something that's gonna block that a little bit. Kind of almost like we're talking with Bill, right? What can we do in the now? And then what can we do as a bigger project down the road?
I guess my concern is that, like, that's where the path is, and so if we say no crossing there, where are we expecting them to cross? And in all likelihood, will they walk 200 feet to a safer crossing area, just to walk 200 feet back to the path?
And I think we want to get counts on whether there are people using that pathway, because both of us had never, even then I walked down it and was like, I'm not gonna keep going to see where this goes, so I still need to complete the journey, and I think it just is one of those behind the subdivision connects down closer to, yeah, and it just keeps going around the back of the buildings there, so I agree with that if it's a busy, high-use crosswalk, but I don't know if I've ever seen anybody on that pathway, and our concern is just immediately getting folks' attention to not cross there, and if they do, at least we made them aware. And I'm looking to Jason too here, but he's got experience in the public sector and private sector dealing with this. So what are your thoughts on what can we do immediately? We don't have $40,000 for the city to go enhance this on the cheapest that we could ever. I think 40 grand's about the cheapest we could do this with our own crews, and that would be push buttons, I think. But then we'd be uncomfortable with it. This is that we would do that on like Murdoch where it's straight. This is.
With the, I'm curious, so like with the motion, the analysis would do that, they would do the site distance and the analysis to see what kind of improvement is there.
They could come back with a recommendation that's, this is too tight of a curve. You gotta close it and figure something else out or infill the sidewalk so people can get to a straighter location, and then that may be the recommendation is put up the barricades. Some agencies may even want the study before they put the barricades up, so. I'm fine putting them up just because there's nothing there now, and we feel like the cars are coming by fast enough that you wouldn't be able to see them, even if the little bars were there and for the crosswalk. Fine. So at least we'd be getting the attention, like my daughter, when we were at a soccer match, wandered down with her friends and down the shoulder of the road. That sign, the crosswalk, closed sign would have at least gotten their attention to stop or kind of pay attention. So,
Well, that's like, sorry, not to belabor such a small detail, but what if we put like a warning sign, like for pedestrians to know that, because I'm just saying, like, if we sign it as a closed crossing, then it technically is enforceable, so they could get a ticket for crossing the road there, which I know people, they likely wouldn't do, but I guess that if the intent is to make them aware that they're crossing into a street instead of closing it, just like saying, like, if there's other signage of like,
Cross traffic does not stop.
yeah, or
Would we ticket for someone crossing it, or does it just cover our
A
liability?
couple things, you can cross at any point where there's a driveway. The driveway point is in essence, a crosswalk point. So they couldn't necessarily cross right where the path comes out right there. If they stepped right in front of this person's driveway, that then makes it a viable crossing point. If they step this way towards this driveway, that then makes it a viable crossing point legally, from a really technical legal perspective. I don't, in 30 years, I've never issued anyone a ticket in any of these realms, but I get your point where you're saying a sign that says no crossing here, but then there's no other option. What do you do, right? So Jason, what about like bollards there?
That's another option. We could do a bollard and then no parking sign. That might be the cleanest way to do it.
You said there's visual,
Yeah, but then you're looking at that too, and it's like, now we're wiping out that kind of parking and just everyone's
Yeah.
parking, and it's back to the Woodhaven.
You have to do the no parking
Area.
signs, or could you just do the bollards on the pathway? Right,
Yeah, and I haven't looked at stuff in Woodhaven to see what happens when the trails there come out to similar spots, if how those are signed.
I'm not an engineer, but to me, it would seem like bollards right there would achieve that goal of making someone realize that there, or even a Jersey barrier piece right there that.
We're just almost trying to prevent
I guess
crossing.
I kind of like step back a little bit and try to understand where are people going and what is this path used for? And on the west side, it's an access for people in that neighborhood to get to the path that's down in the trees. I'm assuming there's a path down in the trees there.
So the path from the school lot here goes from the school
Yes,
through here.
right.
This is where we're talking about for the signage, right?
Yeah,
And
but
then over here, the path goes down here and then it breaks this way north and goes this way south, just behind that.
Which is the pet facility is behind that.
so the west side connection from St. Charles to the path behind the homes makes sense. It should be there. There's a sidewalk in St. Charles that gets people on the recreational path back there. The path on the other side between the school, the purpose in my mind is to get people from that neighborhood to the school
And back.
and back. And if what we're saying is what I'm hearing is that to get from the path to any viable sidewalk in St. Charles, it's unsafe. My suggestion would be we close off that connection completely. Like, don't pretend like, oh, if you want to take your life in your hands, come this way. Like, if we truly feel like that's unsafe, let's close the connection.
Yeah, that,
People want to go to the school, they have to go down St. Charles to Sunset. And up, to Archer Glen that way or around the backside, but
and I was on, that was my first approach, and then you had mentioned, and I had assumed. And we visited the site 3 times for me to see everything, but I thought there were sidewalks on both sides and then there weren't. So for that to work in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is a drop off. So. Okay. For parents to pull up, drop their kids off, it's not a crosswalk. It's a drop off zone for the most part. Let's
yeah,
head it off.
the school has a drop off.
Right, but what is it for people? Because you had made the point of what the heck are people coming out to do there?
Yeah.
There's no sidewalk.
Push back.
Because the sidewalk's on the other side.
I guess,
The schools rely on these access points into the fields to drop kids off at all the schools.
if you put, I guess what I'm saying, where I would stand though personally is that if you put a crosswalk closed sign there. You have essentially closed it to everyone. Unless they illegally go around this, because there's no place you walk on that path, you get a crosswalk closed. There's no place to go. There's no sidewalk. The only way to go is to go around it into the street.
You have to
into
walk
the
on the street, yeah.
And so what, I think you either gotta fix it or you gotta close it.
But that would be, I don't know, people for watching at home, but this is the unused public access way here. And what's the definition of that public access way? Or I know the city owns it, but if it is, then yeah, it's crosswalk. But if it's a private
It is private.
access way into the school,
I guess that's why I go back to. I agree with what you're saying. It makes sense what you're both saying in regards to this no crosswalk signage that blocks it. To me, I kind of tend to go back, not being an engineer. Way outside my swim lane here, but. The bollards where you're just having something that's obstructing someone on a skateboard, a scooter, or whatever, because
Line
it's.
against the road.
This
But also no
This is
parking
a
too.
downhill. From here, this is your high point, and at the street, it's your low point. So. From just my safety side from policing, I want something to be able to slow or stop someone. From being thrust out in the road. I don't really see a reason to shut it down. I think
We should put bollards there, because I think Jason's right, we don't,
Yeah.
it's not a used crosswalk, put bollards there. But also put the no parking signs, because if someone does go out there. And decide to take life in their own hands, we're not allowing parking there, so now we've compounded the issue of. Making it so there's people darting out in between cars, let's put the bollards up. Minimum amount of no parking, which would be like 25 feet. And then would that work?
Yeah, I mean, those driveways are so close, it'd be like between the two driveways, just no parking. But, and there's a small bollard on the school side of that pathway.
On the
so-
upper side of it, yeah.
Yeah, so like, I wonder if you could just do a similar bollard and then it, it looks like two connection, yeah. Point of,
Hold it back then.
yeah, like access or, but then also too, in the interim, if like safety is the number one concern. I guess, could we just put a big orange barrel with some, like in the very near term, like you were saying, just to get something out there, so. Especially now that school's about to restart, that,
Because we don't have to enhance it, it's a parent crosswalk, and it's got the two driveway drop. Breaks on both sides, so we don't have to do anything, it's. Clearly a crosswalk.
When I lived in that neighborhood and I had children going to school, I would not like if that was closed. If it was temporarily closed, I would step 2 feet to the side of the temporary closure and I would cross the street with my children and send them up the path. And I would not like a flashing light outside my bedroom window
I
either.
think that's,
So
it's a really tough spot.
it is a tough spot. I think bollards are a great idea. The temporary closure you were talking about, is that kind of like when you cross like at a max stop, like one of those little metal?
Yeah, they're, they used to be, like a horseshoe shape, but now
Yeah.
they go up and. Joe's
Yeah.
aluminum, and it just does the symbol with a cross,
Oh.
crossing and a red line.
And is there a way, like Lisa was saying about putting some sort of signage that says that cross traffic does not stop in addition to a
That's a
closed?
good idea. I think the cross traffic.
I gotta say, from the time we've been out there, like even the last time we were out there, we had cars going by. And so we're like, okay, cars coming by and just
Doesn't
kind
help,
of
yeah.
stepped one step out.
Nothing helps.
That while I would feel for someone who has a flashing light maybe going off there for the crosswalk, it's really needed. It's really needs a push button crosswalk there.
So I'm trying to think what I've seen cities do in response to accidents, and they'll bag the signal heads and they'll put up a temporary crosswalk, closed barricades on both sides in response to an accident while they study the intersection, and I don't. And that's where we came up with the approach for the barricades was, we don't have $50,000 to do the study and the enhancements here yet. So could we take that approach and just put the barricades up and then pause and just say, hey, we're not endorsing this crosswalk. Obviously, it's an apparent crosswalk, but heads up. And that was where we came from. But gosh, I don't, now that we talked about it, I'm like compounded.
Would you, as a committee, be willing to look at something that says that the new motion would be somewhere in the realm of let engineering look at the aspect of timeline to be able to get bollards put in? And if that's gonna be too extensive, we'll look for another solution that gives some kind of barrier.
They keep your eyes peeled for similar treatments. So that's what I do is I go out and try to copy.
Like I said, like a barrel or a Jersey barrier.
We talk about the flashing lights again, is that, you said push button this time, so it only flashes when you push a button, then it says someone's crossing?
Yeah, it's just the
It's
advanced
constant
warning on that.
flashing.
It's the advanced warning on the crosswalk. signs you typically have an advance warning crosswalk here, but you wouldn't be able to tell there's anyone in the crosswalk. So you would want to push the button and then it would send the signal down to this person here. So they'd be able to know that somebody was actually in, and it actually serves probably the purpose of a push button system over most of the, just putting them on the straightest stretch where you can see people. Probably makes more sense to put this in here. But now we're a low use. We don't even have, maybe we put it in, the other thought was, where does this connect? Is this gonna connect up into Stella Olson Park ever? What's part of the regional plan? Is if this is gonna be like a higher use trail, then we go through and repave it. Maybe we enhance this location with that.
Is there a way to count the pedestrian usage?
I mean, we actually probably would pick this up during our TSP, and we could even do that through one of the two companies that does pedestrian cams, but I honestly think it would be like, I'd rather just check it out ourselves and see if it's only one or two people or.
That's what it
It's pretty
seems.
low use.
Cool day, it's gonna be heavy.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly, I think it starts, it's just one of those trails where in lieu of a sidewalk, it goes on the backside of the subdivision and then it loops back around to the front.
Which is weird because that's the side that has the sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't know if those are kind of more driveway aprons or.
And of each, the trail that looks like, anyways, from here, it just like, that, like, it doesn't connect you to another trail.
It's, I didn't know that it was that back there and it was that paved and that long of a trail, so it's at least something. we
It
can
makes
just-
sense it would be connected in the future,
Yeah,
so,
so I
like,
think it'd be neat if it was. So what do we
I
wanna,
would, I would,
hold the decision and
yeah, I would,
table it?
I would be okay with like, just adding to the motion that we ask staff to look into more near-term, less big project, I have options. I don't know that I want to say one thing or another.
No, and this is the one, in a month, we'll have, we're doing an RFP to get some consultants in here in traffic, and this is definitely when I would just pick my own discretionary hours to call up the traffic engineering. So what do you think here? And if they're like, oh my gosh, you need to look at these 4 spots and here's what the city of X did and you get rid of it or put sidewalk in fill or barricade it. And we still might want to get, like, you know, an hour or 2 of consulting time to, just because of precarious trail, private drive, horizontal curve, no sidewalks. It's interesting, and I originally thought this St. Charles case file was out on Sunset. We put a crosswalk at St. Charles across Sunset, because further down from St. Charles, there's a horizontal or a vertical curve issue heading eastbound Sunset that may need a crosswalk treatment there. So this is an example of why we need to meet out in the field more on these, even multiple times.
Jason, your idea is kind of similar to what you guys did as a committee on some stuff a year ago. On downtown, where you said leave it for staff to see what you can come up for a. kind of quicker temporary fix, and the bigger project still pushes forward.
Yeah. And that mainly stems from, it seems like a more complicated thing to work through than just throw something up because of the potential ramifications with accessibility stuff and, doing something that really isn't something. We're just trying, like, do something.
And just putting down the continental bars and a typical treatment with the advanced signage would almost be more dangerous, because we're now inviting people to take the 2 steps out to the traffic.
Yeah,
More confident, and then the cars are zooming around, and we stood right there. And we even went up closer to the further up the road so cars could see us, and they still, whoa, and we're like, just.
I think you just need to think through and make sure you don't do something that is worse than doing nothing. And I think after you guys like to work through all that, I still think that if it's truly unsafe, I mean, I'm sorry that it's not, a good connection, but if it's not safe, then that's where I stand personally. But that's why I would be okay with just like basically Kicking it to you guys,
It's fine, yeah.
come back with some ideas maybe.
I have a question. Are all the kids funneled to this one path to go to the school?
No.
No? So are we gonna have to look at all the other?
Getting some counts on this lot on the both sides during school would be helpful. And to see if it's more of a drop off, local usage or what.
There's another connection up around the corner on the north, but it comes in at the end of the road. It's not like a dangerous curve that you can't see. And then it's also not too far from just taking St. Charles down to Sunset and over to, taking the public street to
I
the,
think this trail actually comes out and loops around near the other location further down where it's the T.
oh yeah, there is that.
I think this trail just loops right around to that same spot.
This one seems to be more dangerous because it's on that sharp corner. So people driving don't expect it and they can't see it.
Maybe that's another option too, is that I'm gonna get the consultant's opinion on it too. Maybe the only option is because of the horizontal curve is we reduce speeds to 20, put shrubs and make it a shared street. And now you're really not supposed to cross there. You're just supposed to walk out to the street and walk up or down the street. I don't know. Just thinking outside the box for,
It's a very substandard street. in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
it's that curve that we would never put a pathway there.
Yeah,
If we were to do this. Now,
okay, I'm not supposed to make motions. if I want to.
motion to rescind. the motion.
One more quick question. I'm looking at the map and it calls St. Charles all the way north. It connects to Barbara Way at a T. And it looks like there is path access there
Yeah,
to the school.
into the school there. I was surprised at this. I've been going to like 4 or 5 soccer matches. And then we moved over to this field and I looked back and was like, I never knew that path was there.
Yeah, and they
Like
have
forever.
it from there. So it seems that the people who would use the out on St. Charles Way would be local residents right around there whose kids are going to school. It's almost as easy if you're south of that path to just go to Sunset and take the main entrance, and if you're north of that path to go to Barbara Way. So the idea of closing it, yeah, at first I was thinking you're stranding, abandoning all the people who live on that street who no longer have access, but they do have access. There's 2 other options.
It
So-
really is to be closed until someone connected like the regional trail to the. And it wasn't just a local trail behind the homes, it was connected to Stellos Park, and then we had traffic, but for now, there's nobody.
I mean, the difference could be though, like, I have little kids, so if I had a little kid and I lived right there. I'd be able to be like, yeah, you can walk to school.
On your own.
But if they had to go out to Sunset, turn down Sunset, they're like, I might need to walk with you. I don't know.
Well, and also it's like, people are like water, they're gonna take the path of least resistance. And so
Yeah.
that's probably 500 feet both ways. They're not, people aren't gonna walk 2 city blocks. Out of their way.
City property. You guys.
That's better as far as the fence on that side. I'm school, they want to fence it.
Yeah, because that's what I thought when I first saw it was. Is this necessary? Because my daughter went down out on the street. I'm like, does this even need to be here? Because of the Barbara Way and basically the main entrance.
Yeah, the appropriate thing to do is to talk to them, but it is city property and you can close it. They don't need the school.
I think maybe that is an option until the regional trail connects up to that neat path. I think it's neat.
Get pushback.
But if the treatment's like $70,000 or $100,000, I guess,
Yeah.
that's more to come on this little item.
I think it would be important to get the school district's opinion as well. If they would want
Eyes
that.
on it too.
Off, not, or, yeah, how much it's used, if they say, no, that's vital to us, or maybe they say, from a safety perspective, we don't want people to come in and play fetch with their dog during school hours, so we would prefer if it was gated
Yeah.
off,
It's just
you never
another
know what their
access for
opinion is.
people to creep onto the property too.
Mhm.
And maybe we can make a note to head over there, the drop off hours for school and just kind of keep an eye on it in September and see, are people using this or is it just sit there unused throughout the day and just gets used for the sports teams and stuff?
I'll make a motion to look into more near-term options, including but not limited to signage, barricades, closure. And then also an additional analysis for the crossing site distance and talking to the school district about potentially closing.
Well said.
Did I miss anything?
Not
Yeah, it covers, yeah, I would second that motion. That's good.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, we'll take a vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? All right,
so a small one, but such a big one.
Yeah.
Thanks for,
Just for the next.
thanks for letting us kind of open that up. And
yeah, but,
kind of detail that out.
all right, we are on to 23-01 and 01.1, concern regarding assuring high school parking lot traffic and paved road.
So in regards to this, as you know, we've had 5 months of trying to get some movement on the ideas that we've proposed. We've had no success to date on that. We're having a lack of success in communication with the school district, including us on discussions. And at this point, we've elevated it to the city manager's office. To see why we're not having communication.
That we just ask them, just move to ask them about another path, and we don't have answers on this one. It might take a long time on that one too, then. This is about opening the gates during drop off. Is that what this one was in regards to?
We provided multiple kind of, because you weren't here, Richard, but we provided a packet. We can get it for you.
I saw it at the police board meeting. It was passed around by the other days.
We provided, I think, 2-3 options,
Mhm.
suggestions of kind of trying to do some different patterns that would potentially help and or open to hearing suggestions from school district for a totally different plan or idea. So
The goal to get this one implemented before the next school season, school year starts
it was.
in next week.
Yeah, and didn't we kind of have several items? I think our approach here, and when we get this stuff uploaded into GIS, we'll be able to split up one complaint or case file into like as many items as it ends up being. Like Haid had installed no parking or standing signs, and I put in a service request for city crews to do that as soon as they can. And we could break that down into a 0.2 or whatever, but this one was loaded up with like 3 separate.
So the good news is, to what Jason's saying, that the piece that we can control, which is the putting the signage of no stopping, standing on Haid. On the south side of Haid here. We do have the ability to make that adaptation.
Personally, Hail Mary attempt to get everything done by Wednesday.
So that, the good news is that right, Jason, you'd had some positive.
Yeah, I just talked to the county. We haven't taken over this as a technical transfer of jurisdiction from the county yet, but we're gonna take over landscaping maintenance for it. And I guess gave them a heads up that said our crews are gonna go put up the no parking, and nobody objected to it. So we'll go strap them on there and at least take care of that component. And then
That piece addresses of the original complaint, that part was addressing at the end of the school day. Traffic backing up all along Haid, all the way to the traffic light here with people that.
And then we have
parking
the
on the road.
rules
To
of
receive,
To
to
have
pick
kids
up.
come up to them. So we'll be able to address that piece of it.
and the school zone, because it still says 25 miles per hour and it doesn't designate.
Correct.
I'm pretty sure the county is waiting to swap those signs out with the speed limit sign, so it was all one package because it's the same crew coming out to do the county's work. So all part of the
It would change it to a 20 zone.
1 in a million shot for next week is to come out and get the speed school zone signs swapped out, the no parking and standing by the city, and then Elwood and Needy 35 miles per hour.
If it doesn't happen by next week, we're still
fine.
very good at
Gonna
the
get
fact that that's gonna get done, that piece of this complaint. But the other aspects,
That was our goal, and I think we want to push that until the nth hour, because up until the morning of, from my perspective, of at least try it.
so we'll fix what we can fix and. But the aspects of changing and dealing with the traffic problems on Elward in the morning. And being backed up all the way to 99 and those things, and then trying to adjust that so that we had traffic coming in on Kruger. Into the school and coming in on Hayes, that just divide it. That's the part of it.
And we can break those up too, because we had,
Emotional movement.
oh, sorry, yeah, just, we can break these up into the GIS I keep talking about, but where there was, I think, a case file about the striping. Or a complaint or a comment about, can this be changed so commuters can get by in the morning? And we'll keep that dot on there, so when the county goes out to repave it, we can discuss that with them, or maybe even broach the subject now, and how much would the city have to pay to restripe it, to fix it, if we wanted to. And same with the drive-by, I think we should just sub this out and leave it sitting there until the school district gets back to us.
So we'll see, like I said, it's been escalated to the city manager's office. We'll see by next month if we have any change of pace here.
If no other changes happen, where do you think all those cars that park along Main are gonna end up? Is it gonna be another problem for you next week? Or,
Well, we did have, as part of the original complaint, that they were parking at the end of the school day along Cade, and then they were also parking right here on this tiny stretch of Orchard Hill and right here on the Fisk. A little bit waiting for kids to just come out and cross. I would guess as these signs come up here, either we'll get more compliance, people coming into the lot, or they may spill in over into this area. We'll have to see.
Do we have any hard numbers as to, traffic flow during end of school, beginning of school hours?
So that was part of that study we kind of did, that Pierce did and others from the police department did of time breakdowns of how far the cars back up, et cetera. And it was extensive. It's for a short period of time, but it is extensive. And when you think about it, for the city of Sherwood, for anyone who's having to commute through Sherwood to get north to Beaverton, Hillsborough, anything north of us, your two ways to do that are via Elward or via Roy Rogers Road. And with this being completely blocked all the way from Hayes, all the way back through the traffic circle, that's in our opinion, that's not reasonable to have that blocked even for a short period of time. So we'll see what kind of movement we get in the next month, and we'll let you know. School communicate some plan.
That's my daily commute. I work right there, and I've seen you park there all last year. Probably counting how many people are coming by or watching what's happening, but yeah, that's exactly where the issue is. And until that left turn right clears out, then we can all go straight again.
Is it legal to block traffic to wait to get in, like Murray Boulevard? Is it legal to block everybody up to wait to get in to turn left, or?
Well, in this example, it would be, they're just waiting behind traffic to get into the pocket. We would never.
Keep driving and then go all the way to the next city just because you couldn't take a left turn out?
And the reason the Kruger entrance is closed off is because that's bus only.
Correct. And to be able to open that up. In the suggestions that we did provide to them of opening Kruger up to have half of the student population go into this parking lot and park. And then have the other part of the population going by Hayes into this parking lot. Obviously, they get seniors in the front, but to divide this up. There would have to be some blockage right here. And I think, if I remember correctly, they would potentially need like a staff member. That would have to be out here. Helping maybe stop traffic so that the buses could get out. And I think some of those stresses are as staffing issues to be able to have personnel out there, be able to kind of be that that traffic controller, of stopping students coming in so that a bus can go, because you gotta keep the buses going. That was a priority, obviously, and we agree with that, but
That isn't something the new middle school SRO wouldn't be able to do, is maybe handle some traffic stuff and then head to the middle school afterwards.
no,
No.
no. The middle school has its own
Yeah,
set of
but probably not.
things, yeah. I like the creativity, though.
Well, let's see where the city manager gets with it and maybe.
Yeah, I'd say give us 1 more month, then if we've got movement, then great, and if we don't, then we're just gonna have to look at the things we could do and. We'll let you know. Real quick, Chair, I know it's funny every time I say it, right? So Officer Pierce has been kind of on a more pressing detail out on the road today. So as you know, he's always with us on this. I asked him to kind of come in and stop in just in case we have some questions because he is our expert. So he was just kind of stopping in to see if you guys had any questions on anything we handled so far. If not, he's probably going to spend just a few minutes and then he'll dash out. He still loves us, but he's got some other stuff that's pressing. So anything so far that you guys have questions from Officer Pierce on?
If you get any questions on the Sunset Boulevard crosswalk safety study, if you're ever out in that area by Timberwolf, send them to me. We just got our draft in a couple weeks ago for that for internal review, and I'm hoping that just for everybody's knowledge, we're hopefully do a work session on that of next steps. So I just mention that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair.
Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll move on to 23-03, requesting speed limit signs, temporary speed trailer, or temporary speed radar signs installed in Pine and Division. Yeah, on Pine, between Division and Sunset.
They're up.
The speed signs are up or just the temporary?
Permanent speed signs are up. And then, so we can take this one off, and what we're gonna do is, or I'm proposing we do is. I had mentioned the stop bars there at Division need to get moved up, but we're gonna wait until they need to be replaced with maintenance. So we're not kind of throwing away a thermoplastic that's usable. And so we'll just keep those in our GIS system as pending, just so we don't lose track of those. So just wanted to mention that.
So we can move,
Yeah, we got something.
we move to close it?
Think so.
I move to close it.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sweet. That's good. All right, 23-05, requesting improvements to Villa Road. Road repavement, speed limit sign painted lines.
We discussed that one earlier.
So that's the original one that came in a couple months ago, and then
We'll keep getting them.
Jenna was
Bring them all together.
so I think you guys have.
Actually, will be helpful for our PSP update.
I think Sabrina's gonna just put 0.005 and then 0.05 will be after 0.005.1 just under it
Yeah.
for the future stuff.
Yeah, I just put them with that because it was in the last.
Yep.
Got it. All right, 23-06, request for speed bumps at three-way stop at Division Street and Park.
So this was another one that obviously we had a lot of discussion on last meeting. We went in a lot of different directions on this one in regards to talking about some additional stop signs. This is the one where we have an intersection where there's 2 stop signs currently. One direction on Division does not. Spidered into like no parking in this on Park Road. We kind of went a lot of the directions. Jason and I have re-pulled this complaint. And it may be beneficial to take a look at it. We think that this needs to maybe just be focused down to what this complaint was. And this complaint was kind of discussing, as it said, this is a three-way stop. People driving up division, gas and speed up the hill, period. That first part is really a speed complaint. So we've addressed that in regards to Sherwood Police looking at that. In regards to speed and monitoring people for speed. Next part of it said, coming down, some ignore the stop signs. And some do a California stop. That's once again, a law enforcement piece of dealing with that. Next piece was people turning left on Park Row. Cut the corner short and don't prepare well for someone stopped at Division Street at that stop sign. This was where we were talking about the aspect of thinking that third stop sign there would actually prevent that kind of quick cutting the corner turn. Jason and I's feeling on this was we just want to bring this one back to center in regards to what the complaint is. We kind of started going into the aspects of the mailbox being hit twice, the slowing of people with having the, what do you call them? Speed bumps.
Oh, yeah, there's a few steep for the speed cushion.
And I think, you know, you talked about the aspect that we can't do that on Division due to the grade of that slope. So we just kind of wanted to see what you thought as a committee of recentering this discussion back to what we from the law enforcement side thought was the stop sign, the additional stop sign we think is very, very important to help deal with people that are at stop signs thinking they've stopped and they then have the right to go turn and they don't realize the other way up Division doesn't. We think that addresses the complaint in a lot of it. And we think the aspects of the speed and those things of this complaint are addressed through law enforcement monitoring the street.
I feel a third stop sign would solve most of those concerns. There was discussion yet brought up about adding a no parking sign on Park Row, just to ensure that there was more space between where the stop sign and Division is. But honestly, again, I told this anecdote about how I drove that before the last meeting and I encountered the same thing where I was going up Division to turn left. And the car on Park just turned in front of me, assuming I was going to stop. So
He or she was stopped right here, Richard, and they turned like this. And you were down here and you were like, whoa.
Exactly. And I was gonna turn left on there, knowing I had the right of way
To go this
to
way
go that way.
and they just
And they
thought,
just pulled right in front of me, assuming I would be stopping.
Yeah.
So it's a three-way stop with only two stop signs. And that adds a lot of confusion, stopping on Division before that intersection will now kind of temper your speed. So you have to start to go up the hill. So you're not going to be flying by the time you get up there. And it'll just make that whole turning situation safer. So that I am in favor of a third stop sign and additional law enforcement surveillance was the ultimate end goal.
Could you see the car at the stop sign before they started coming out?
Yes, I saw the car easily. So that wasn't the issue that I was gonna hit them. But again, it was the safety in their mind that
But
they,
before this, I guess I'm asking, while they were stopped and you were coming, could you see them or did you only see them after they pulled forward?
but I saw them stop there.
Because there's like a ton of bushes that are super tall in the
You
corners.
push the stop bar out, but then you're gonna sweep through and clip the same thing at like EDO where there's no stop bars, they use crosswalk bars, so the trucks are dimensioning. Turning complex.
so the bush stuff, we can have code enforcement look at that and just make sure that the bushes are cut back in accordance with municipal code.
There's like a triangle or
Yeah,
something.
we have an exhibit for that with the two 0.4 feet.
There's
Out
the-
and we
there's
wanted to
the-
two.
yeah.
Yeah. We've sent letters off, but we could do certain property owner there. Before you make a motion, I the way that I'm treating stop signs is, we don't want to spend a bunch of money on a stop sign warrants when we know this one's gonna be a city council warrant. So it would be just, you make the motion and I'll make the recommendation to the city manager, who will then probably run it by the city council. And if they want to do it, we'll do it. If they reject it, I'll come back and say that they don't want to install one. And I also have staff looking into whether there was ever a third stop sign here and whether, and how that was removed. Was it by resolution or why it came out to begin with? Just to close the loop on that, but I don't see why that would prevent you from making a motion to add the third stop sign or attempt a recommendation that we attempt to get it approved.
The only thing we'd ask you to consider when you're making whatever motion you want to go forward with would be the aspect of parking and restricting any of the parking along here on Park Row or on this side of Park Row. We just ask that whatever motion you do move forward with, we need to be sensitive to that aspect, that when we put no parking in, it really seriously impacts that neighborhood. And so when we limit, we've talked about with some of the other locations, right? When we take away parking, we maybe help deal with one complaint, we generate 7 more. So just the stepping stone approach, I think, is a good thing. I think the aspect of what you're talking about, Richard, of like supporting a stop sign, if that's the direction you all go, it's a good stepping stone to see if it helps solve the issue. And if we continue to see crashes and problems and things like that, then maybe we start then looking at additional aspects of restricting parking now.
Honestly, I don't think many people would park on Park Row on that stop sign side of the road because it's a law. You can't park within so many feet of an intersection or stop sign, I believe, something along those lines.
What it is, like 20.
So if there's law enforcement on this road just monitoring it and they see someone who pulls up to the white line and parks,
Yes.
they'll ticket them.
Yeah.
I don't foresee someone parking that close, so the stepping stone approach is very reasonable for me. That if we can get a stop sign approved, that might see a big impact.
I want to make a motion for painting that curb red. I could at least ask. I know we don't like to do it, but there's spots where we do it, not at all, but I could see. I mean, it really comes down to if we have near misses on it ourselves.
Stepping stone approach.
Yeah, let's do something.
Because the only person that parks there that could cause a hazard. On this street. There's a tow truck driver who lives right on the street, kind of by where all those cars are parked, by the red pickup and the silver car. And he's got a large flatbed style tow truck, so it's not like a traditional small tow truck. And he street parks because it's a take home vehicle for him. So anytime there's people parked around his house, he has nowhere else to park. So sometimes he does have to park closer up towards that stop sign. And him and we have a good relationship, so he kind of knows, but we've talked before about that. So if there was a no parking zone put in just within the range of the stop sign, that may prevent the tow truck from being put there and then blocking somebody's view. That makes sense.
You'd have to be parked right up to that stop bar line though, because these trees would be.
I think that first stop sign will help the scenario when someone is basically pulled up and just sits their car there though, because now the cars aren't whizzing by taking lefts. They're able to reset and go,
Reset.
gosh, I've only got 14 feet to squeeze through here. And then it kind of resolves the issue. We don't have to paint the curb red or.
What's the limit for moving a stop bar? Like how far from the intersecting street does it have?
Pretty flexible. There is certain distances of how far away from the crosswalk it can be, but you can put it and use the crosswalk bars as that. And then the stop sign can always kind of be put in the most visible spot, but I don't know that, you can see the rules off the top of my head, but.
They cost.
Maybe scooch it closer towards division is what you might be thinking, so it gives it.
Well, because just from my traffic enforcement, what I see is It's rare for people to actually stop at the stop bar. They kind of pick and choose a place to stop. Where they can see. They're legally required to stop at the stop bar, but I can tell you. It's very rare to see somebody who actually does that.
They would be more likely to if the heads were turned. And you can actually.
Yeah, because otherwise people, they pull up, they stop at the stop bar, then they pull forward again, they stop and they look, so it's kind of like they're inching forward. And what that leads to is people just bypassing the stop bar and they just kind of stop somewhere.
If pedestrians are there or something.
Yeah.
So we'll, depending on what your motion looks like, we could put it in where we'll contact, like say, code and have them check, make sure the bushes are trimmed proper, so that helps that also.
Yeah, I'll go put my best effort to, for a stop sign warrants. The best I can, see if it is straightforward, maybe it's clear and I can just type that and send it off to the city manager and tell them, you know, you don't have a choice. I doubt it, but it might be close, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, you're at the stop line, but if there was a stop sign there, then,
Yeah.
I agree that that would limit that.
If we don't put a stop sign, third one, we probably should move the stop bar. Closer, but then that's just somebody that,
Well, let's let you guys go with the motion.
yeah, motion.
I'll move to address the vegetation overgrowth issue, have the city talk to the property owner about that. And then we ask the city council to put a third stop sign there, provided that there was not a resolution to have one removed previously.
We'll look at having that push short ornamental tree or whatever it is.
Okay, yeah, we take care of that through code compliance and we have some pretty clear exhibits in our design standards that we can. If it is clearly too high, we just send them a letter that says, hey, your bushes are in violation of the ordinance and please trim them or we'll head out and do it and send you a bill, even though it's probably only a couple $100 or $50, you know. We probably just do it
And I wonder how long of a vehicle or can be parked on a, city street. I mean, a tow truck, I mean, is he a 24-hour? Yeah, so he's allowed to bring them.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has a travel trailer and it's hooked up to the vehicle, they can bring it in, they could have their 37-foot trailer attached to a F-350 if they need to, that's.
As long as you have tags.
Yeah, as long as it's. The trailer's not freestanding, it's attached to a vehicle, then it can, it can be there.
Okay. This one's a little hard for me for some reason. I don't know. I'm gonna support it because there's so much support. But I think that the heaviest traffic flow, my guess without data is that the division to park is heavy, and I think that you're gonna put a stop sign in there, and it's gonna be a lot of non-compliance. And I think that I think there could be other options, but I'm not convinced that they're better. So that's kind of why I'm supporting it, but I think you could make Division Street a through street and it's a T intersection, you stop sign park. And it maintains that division to park flow. It eliminates the confusion of the stop signs. But that's just a partial thought and I don't feel strongly enough about it. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that. But
Why is that division? So I understand the north or I guess it's east-west on Division is the heavier traffic flow, but is the left-hand turn there the highest volume? Or like you were saying, could we just remove the stop sign on Division and just keep it a T intersection one-way stop.
The issue from a law enforcement side is you take out that stop sign on something that's already coming down the hill, it will have
Speeding.
worse law compliance in regards to speed now.
Yeah, I think that may have been installed using a stop sign to serve a purpose in lieu of speed cushions perhaps, and I've seen other locations where they put the stop sign on coming down the hill on Division and no stop signs on Division to Park Road, and then they treat it basically like that's the through street. And then it tees up to that, which is even more dangerous, I think, because now you've got cars driving through a 90-degree turn as if it's a road, which is completely dangerous with parking, so.
Yeah, and the reason why I slightly lean towards not liking the stop sign on Division on the coming down the hill is because I figured it was exactly what you said, as people are going too fast down the hill, but we're very clear that we don't put stop signs in to control speed. So I'm not saying it's not working or
I'll
whatever.
agree to disagree with you on that one.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's actually
it's written that way.
In our,
That you can't do it, but yeah, I believe that this one was installed by electeds and we'll just honor that. Decision, don't take it out, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're gonna add one, you don't halfway, you make it a full stopped intersection because.
Or you can take it out and then you could put your speed cushions down in the flat section of Division, but now we're pushing price up and introducing a CIP project, and we don't want that. We just want.
Yeah, I'll use Hanley as an example. You guys know where Hanley is, right? Hanley, we deal with complaints constantly on Hanley, similar downhill road. There's how many stop signs on that? 2 now?
Yeah.
2 stop signs, and we have complaints that come in on a regular basis wanting more speed enforcement, more stop signs on that road to try to mitigate it. So
yeah, I think.
I just can't imagine the pushback we would get if we eliminate.
I'm thinking that this would remove this third stop sign when Pine Street wasn't done, because there was no cut through. We did a Pine Street improvements project that provided technically a collector cut through. When that wasn't there, everybody did have to drive through Division, so it was a lot more traffic, and once Pine Street went in, maybe we can justify putting the stop sign back. I don't, it's just that I'm speculating that may be the case, but before Pine Street improvements, that this was like the main, because I still take this a lot versus Pine Street to get into Old Town over to the Cannery Square, so I could see why the stop sign not being there if everybody was forced to drive through Old Town and take Main Street or that end, why it would help to not have it, but now that Pine Street's there, I think we might be able to put it back.
I had a note too from last meeting that we talked about speed bumps, but that you were gonna look into speed cushions. I didn't know if that was something that would,
I may have said I'll verify the slope, but even the speed cushions are not allowed over, I think 14%, just because they.
oh, that's there.
There are portions going up the hill that are about that, similar to Pine Street, and they become kind of a jump for bikes and then a kind of a jump for cars. If you've ever hit like manhole or something placed on a road, you can launch cars off. And that's what kids do. So that's why we didn't put them in, was we were worried that it would become an attractive nuisance or dangerous, flop a car off into the sidewalk.
Maybe even up to 20%.
I think so too, also, share that. I mean. I think the compliance will still be okay because there's still only 1 block from Maine. So they haven't gotten speed yet either.
Sure.
And even if it is a California stop, at least they're slowing versus.
Yeah.
Going full speed ahead from Maine on.
Yeah, I'm not like super concerned about it. It's just usually everything we make decisions on, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. And I'm 100% on board. And this one, I'm like, well, there's a little hesitation, but, and those are the reasons, but I support it because I think there's so much confidence behind it being a good solution. So. Okay.
If it's a disaster, we take out the stop sign.
It's an inconvenience. You know, the area, it becomes an inconvenience to stop if you're driving. I feel for us, we're safe, we know the area, it's gonna be an inconvenience at the stop.
Yeah,
And then go, because we probably take the turn safely, but for those that just whip through it, it will.
take an extra 4 seconds to get downtown.
And I apologize, the other thing we forgot to mention, the other thing we thought too about positive for putting the stop sign here on Division. Was that, remember last time when we were in the meeting, we were talking about, whoa, sorry. If you're going up Division, that right at this point it narrows.
Yeah,
So we kind of also, Jason and I, sorry, should mention this earlier, we also thought that aspect of stopping there at that stop sign gives the driver kind of that ability to
reorient themselves.
over the upcoming narrowing.
And I think if there's mailbox problems, we could throw a fog line down that to kind of. And they'd even put like those rumble dots up that side to keep, prevent people from, so it just shakes you before you go there, but just a simple fog line might. Running along that kind of drainage line would help.
But like I said, for right now, we just want a stepping stone approach.
Put some reflectors on the mailboxes and he should be good.
Yeah, I said my 2 cents. Anybody else? Anything they want to add? All right, we'll take a vote. You guys remember the motion?
Yes.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. Let's see, what are we on? 2307. No parking on one side of Smith Avenue between Mike and Midler.
I was not able to follow up with staff that was looking into why the past, I think 2 or 3 city managers said we're gonna go install these, but they ended up not installing no parking signs, so I still don't know the reason why. They aren't installed, because I've always thought they should be installed, but there's clearly a reason that either the residents are coming out and stopping the installation, or maybe there's some sort of fire or lane issue that it's met and they can have parking on both sides, so. Yeah, hopefully we can table this one over the next meeting.
Might be too that. Like in. New development, since the last time they've looked into it might be different. I mean, there's a trail, but I thought, like, it seems like some, I don't know if there's been new development there, new housing, additional housing. Since the last request to take away parking.
Yeah, I think I felt there was enough reasoning for the no parking signs 10 years ago, personally, but. Maybe it's another one that we make the recommendation, like the stop sign to the city council, and they decide not to install the no parking signs.
All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is city engineer update on pending city projects.
Yeah, I've been working with our PIS staff to get all the case files uploaded, and it sounds like we have a pretty easy to enter app to do that, but we haven't gotten going on that, but Sabrina put together a list of CIP projects that kind of case files are kind of deferring to. I don't know if we want to go over that, but I don't really have an update on the GIS aspects. I hope to have every case file uploaded into the GIS system at the next meeting, and then we can pull something up here and look at it and expand upon that at the following meeting and be able to code them out and display them, make them red for current agenda items. But that way we'll have everything in our system and it will never go away. So, for example, if we Mark St. Charles is complete, and 5 years down the road, someone's wondering what's going on there, we'll just pull up that case file spatially and it'll be there. And it sounds like it will be really easy to enter the case file for any staff through this new GIS application. So I'm old school GIS from 10 years ago, so it's more shape files, and it sounds like it's a lot easier to do this stuff these days. So that's good news.
So just for clarity, these are all in process. are being worked on is,
I haven't gone over the list, I mean, we can, these are all. Our list of things that that this committee has discussed as being projects that are over $100,000, too big for, us, they would have to be required in our CIP plan, so. Whether they're aspirational, I think is what you would call it, and then our city council will rank and prioritize and fund certain projects. And I'm sure there's some on there that are funded, but they may not all be. I know Edie Road is listed in our TSP and regional plans for funding. Villa Road is not, the wildlife haven stuff.
that's a big redo.
Yeah, and basically the intent is not to just push all the projects off. Hey, they'll be done with the CIP plan. It's to address what we can now and then keep track of the stuff that.
So
the bigger
they're
projects.
closed from our committee because we handed them off to.
Until that GIS map pops up, we're giving that sheet just to show you the cases that we sent from here to there.
Cool. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Progress. When it's timed up right now.
Okay.
Okay, so committee comments, anybody have anything on the agenda?
I just want to say that I thought it was kind of cool that we got Street of Dreams here, and I was surprised that it didn't impact our traffic. I was thinking I was gonna have to avoid that whole side of town, and but everything's been very smooth, so that's been great.
We were surprised too.
I'm sure. I think the first night, there's like some VIP night, and I saw a lot of heavy traffic happening then that night when I came home from work, but then other than that, everything's been great.
Yeah, the first night was their VIP party and it was a larger crowd than on any normal night, so there was just. Yeah, big influx in cars, so I actually had to shut down a few entrances to some of the neighborhoods just because it was creating such a bottleneck and. A hazard issue with people parking, blocking driveways, et cetera, so we had to redirect some traffic and luckily. Knowing that the event was going to be bigger than expected and parking was going to be an issue, Langers donated their parking lot to use. And then the Street of Dreams contracted with Westland Wilsonville School District. And they donated some of their bus drivers and they actually brought buses up and bus people from Langers up to the Street of Dreams Park. So it actually worked out really well for traffic.
That's perfect.
And we can see that, Officer Pierce did, as well as Sergeant Isla did all the planning for that event. And, Officer Pierce was there kind of as the OIC of that event and did just a phenomenal job of on that busy first day of making sure that there was some quick decisions were made to be able to keep the traffic going and flowing. So he did an awesome job. Sergeant Asa did a great job of the overall plan. We had overtime set for, duty enforcement and extra crashes that could potentially happen and just for the event. And so there was other officers involved in working those overtime shifts to make sure that it was a safe event. It went really well. We didn't have a single complaint that came into the Washington County Dispatch Center. From what I was told, for that entire event. So that goes to not just to what the officers did, but a good job on their staff of communicating well, I think, with citizens. And really good job with the Sherwood citizens also, kind of understanding that this was a thing and kind of rolling with punches a little bit as it went. So like everyone involved really kind of stepped up and did a great job.
Yeah, I told dispatch that I anticipated 7 to 10 parking complaint calls within the first hour when they opened up. Not a single parking complaint call came in, and I was shocked, to be honest. So it actually worked out very well.
Residents has been, stepping up and understanding all the punches, and it worked out really well. To deal with it for a little bit there, that was great. So.
We're hoping their property values go up.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
We got free admission tickets too. That kind of helps smooth over the part of the issue. Frustration.
You're all geared up for school starting and
Oh, yeah,
all that comes with that.
20 mile an hour everywhere.
Go back into it next week.
Yeah.
We have extra officers present at the elementary schools and
All the officers will get assigned out that day on those first weeks, specifically, unless we have other calls for service that are going on, they'll farm out, as many of those schools just to be
just to be
present.
seen.
Yeah. And try to help live with those issues, and then obviously we'll have Officer Wolfer at the high school as well. He'll be back to that through the summer. He's been working regular patrol and helping out our regular patrol numbers, but he switches back next week, so. Yeah. Back to it.
All right.
And we have a new SRO who's going to be announced in about a week or so here.
We do, yes, we're excited about that and getting that transition of getting him geared up to shift over there. So, yeah, it's gonna be good.
SRO is,
Sorry, school resource officer.
Oh.
They'll be assigned to the middle school.
So Officer Wolfer has been our one SRO officer that's assigned to the high school, but in essence, he deals with all the schools, and it's just, there's plenty of work for him to do at the high school. So, a good cooperative work relationship in that regard with the school district, and the city to be able to kind of mutually fund and deal with having another SRO be brought on board to go just to the middle school and be there. So the elementary schools get divided amongst both of them to deal with any issues that pop up there. Regular patrol officers in regards to the mornings and stuff go to the elementary schools to monitor activity there. So yeah, so it's a good thing. The tough thing is it does pull one officer off of our patrol rosters to have this officer then go to the SRO for the middle school. So it brings us down on our patrol numbers, but the schools are a really important thing for us to be involved. It's good for the school. It's good for everybody. So it's adds extra work to people like Officer Pierce and other officers that are working regular call load for the day. But yeah.
so the new SRO, their old position won't, it's not like you'll get a new person.
We'll
Oh, you will?
backfill that position, but you know, it can be 12, 15 months before we get someone through process, their process very long, not like a typical employment process, right? And then once we get them on, then we've got orientations, then we have extensive long field training program. And then if they're a new officer, not a lateral officer, now they've got to go to the academy for 4 months. Plus the 4 months training with other senior officers that they go with and get daily evaluated before they're ever going to be solo. So you can be saying from the time we say we need to hire someone and get going on that process, you're 12, 15 months out before they actually become a solo officer. And we can say we've got that position.
That position, yeah.
Yeah, so it's nice when you get lateral officers and you can speed that process up, but it still takes months and months and months.
I have a question. So this SRO after school, is that officer still on duty? I mean, can be called to?
The SROs usually work like a Monday to Friday schedule, so different than our regular patrol officers than their schedule. So they're working like a 5/8. And so basically they're starting at the start of the school day and at the end of the school day, in essence, is their 8-hour shift. And so then they're off.
And they also go to like football
And
games.
then they are doing, those extra events and that stuff. So yeah, they're off of what we would call like our patrol staffing or patrol nets. They're part of the schools and dealing with that.
And the school district helps share some of the salary.
They
burden.
do, yeah. So it's a cooperative payment plan in regards to how much we, the city, pay versus the school district and to make it all work. So, but yeah. Yeah, good question.
All right, anybody else have any other comments? All right,
Sure.
full meeting. We'll call it. Yeah.
Next meeting, it'll be raining.
Why'd you have to say that?
Yeah.
It's the truth.
Like